The orange light of dusk filtered through the window of a small suburban apartment. Lauren Miller adjusted her glasses on the bridge of her nose and refocused on the graphic design work spread across her desk. 2 days until the deadline. Once this job was finished, she'd have enough to cover this month's rent and utilities. "Mom, is dinner ready yet?" Avery's voice called from the living room. Lauren glanced at the clock and was surprised. It was already past 6. "Sorry, honey. I'll start it right away." Lauren quickly saved her computer files and headed to the small kitchen. She opened the refrigerator and checked what was inside. There was leftover chicken and vegetables from yesterday. She could make something decent out of that. It had been 5 years since she became a single mother. After the divorce, Lauren had been working as a freelance graphic designer from home while raising her 14-year-old daughter Avery. Child support from her ex-husband came irregularly, so she basically supported them on her own. They weren't wealthy, but Lauren always tried to maintain a positive attitude for her daughter's sake. "What are you making?" Avery appeared at the kitchen doorway. "Chicken and vegetable casserole." "Just wait a bit." Avery nodded silently and sat at the kitchen table, looking at her smartphone. Lately, she had become somewhat withdrawn. It might be normal for her age, but Lauren worried there might be something else going on. "How was school?" Lauren asked, trying to start a conversation. "Same as usual," Avery answered without taking her eyes off her phone. "Did you talk to Caroline?" At the mention of Caroline's name, Avery's expression changed slightly. She finally looked up from her phone. "Yes. She seems busy lately." Caroline Wilson had been Avery's best friend. The two had been close since the beginning of middle school, often studying together and spending weekends together. However, in the past few weeks, Caroline hadn't been coming over. The Wilson family was known in the community as an exemplary family. Robert Wilson was a successful real estate developer, and his wife Margaret was actively involved in local charities. They lived in a large house in an upscale neighborhood, and Caroline attended a private school. It was a completely different environment from Avery, who attended public school for financial reasons, but somehow the girls got along well. "Do you want to go to the Wilsons' party?" "I heard it's happening this weekend," Avery suddenly said. "Party?" "No, I'm fine. I can drive you if you want to go." "You don't have to. Caroline just said, I want your mom to come too, so I thought I'd ask." Lauren thought while taking the casserole out of the oven. It was unusual to be invited to a Wilson family party. They were in such different social circles. But why would Caroline want her mother to come too? During dinner, Avery was quieter than usual. Occasionally, when her smartphone vibrated, she would hurriedly check it. "Is there something bothering you lately?" Lauren asked gently. Avery's expression suggested she wanted to say something, but she quickly shook her head. "No, nothing." That night, after Avery had gone to her room, Lauren was tidying up her daughter's notebooks when she found a note. On it was scribbled, "Must help." Lauren felt uneasy, but wanting to respect her teenage daughter's privacy, she didn't pry further. Friday evening, Avery suddenly asked, "Can I stay overnight at Caroline's house? We're having a study group. Everyone's preparing for exams together." Avery seemed somewhat restless. She was speaking faster than usual, and her gaze was unsteady. "At the Wilsons'?" "That's fine, but did Margaret say it was okay?" "Yes. Caroline's mom will call you." A few minutes later, the phone rang. Margaret Wilson's polite voice came through. "Would it be all right if Avery stays over? The children want to study together." "Yes, of course," Lauren replied. "Is there anything she should bring?" "Don't worry about a thing. We have everything here." Margaret's voice had a hint of tension. After hanging up, Lauren looked at Avery. There was a look of determination on her daughter's face. "Be careful. Call me right away if anything happens." I'll be fine, Mom. Avery kissed Lauren and left with a small backpack. As the door closed, silence returned to the apartment. Lauren felt something was off, but couldn't explain exactly what. She recalled recent conversations with Caroline. The tension hidden behind her seemingly perfect demeanor. Her attachment to long-sleeved clothing. As the night deepened, Lauren's anxiety grew. However, she received a message from Avery saying, "Arrived at the Wilsons," which reassured her a bit. In the middle of the night, when Lauren had fallen into a light sleep, the phone suddenly rang. The clock showed 1:20 a.m. It was from an unknown number. "Ms. Miller, this is Detective Johnson from Boston Police. I'm calling about your daughter, Avery." Though the man's voice was low and calm, Lauren's heart began to race. "Avery? But she's supposed to be staying at a friend's house." Lauren's voice trembled. "The Wilson residence, yes," the officer replied calmly. "Before I explain the situation, we need you to come to the scene immediately as her guardian. Just you, the mother. What happened? Was there an accident? Is my daughter all right?" Panic rose within her. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "Your daughter is conscious. But I'll explain the details when you get here. Do you know the Wilson residence?" "Yes." Lauren answered weakly. "In the upscale neighborhood of Oak Hill." "That's right. Please come as soon as possible. An officer will be waiting for you at the front entrance when you arrive." After the call ended, Lauren's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She was frozen for a moment, but then snapped back to reality and hurriedly began changing into jeans and a sweater. Her thoughts were confused, and it took twice as long as usual to make sure she hadn't forgotten anything. She picked up her cell phone and called Avery's number. It just rang with no answer. Then she called the Wilson house, but no one answered there either. Fear gripped her chest. "What's happening?" Lauren whispered to the empty apartment. She grabbed her car keys and rushed out. It was 1:35 a.m. Normally the residential area would be quiet, but tonight there seemed to be an unusual tension in the air, matching Lauren's anxiety. She started the car and drove toward Oak Hill. Her mind was filled with worst-case scenarios. A traffic accident. Intoxication. Drugs. Bullying. But none of these possibilities explained why the police had said, "Just you, the mother." The traffic light turned red, and Lauren reluctantly stopped the car. While waiting, she recalled the recent changes in Avery's behavior. How she had started hiding her smartphone. How she had stopped talking about her friends. And the message that had come to Avery's phone a few weeks ago in the middle of the night, asking, "Are you okay?" The light changed, and the car started moving again. Caroline has been missing a lot of school lately, Lauren remembered. When she had asked Avery why, she had said, "She's not feeling well," but didn't seem convinced herself. As she entered the upscale neighborhood of Oak Hill, mansions illuminated by streetlights appeared one after another. Perfectly manicured lawns, elegant exteriors, soft lights spilling from large windows. Lauren was acutely aware of the difference from her own apartment. Avery had once pointed out Caroline's house. "That's it, the biggest white house," she had said proudly. That day, Lauren had sensed a momentary envy in Avery's expression. But now, as she approached the mansion, only an ominous feeling spread through Lauren's heart. As she turned the corner, she could see the red and blue lights of police cars in the distance. Lauren's heart rate increased. Then she arrived at the large White House. 2 police cars and an ambulance. Several officers were talking outside the house. Lauren turned off the engine with trembling hands and got out of the car. Her legs felt like jelly. A uniformed officer noticed her and approached. "Ms. Miller." Lauren nodded. "Is my daughter safe?" The officer averted his eyes for a moment. "We'll talk inside." Before entering the mansion, Lauren instinctively looked back. The beautifully maintained garden, expensive cars parked in the spacious garage, the seemingly perfect exterior. But tonight, something had broken. Her hand trembled as she turned the doorknob. Lauren prayed desperately in her mind. "Avery, please be safe. Please." Stepping into the spacious entrance hall, she saw high ceilings, marble floors, and elegant decorations. But a discordant tension hung in this perfect space. "This way," the officer guided her to a large living room. The moment she entered, Lauren's blood ran cold. Avery was sitting on a luxurious sofa. Blood was flowing from her forehead, her face was pale, and her eyes were wide with fear. A paramedic was giving her first aid. On the opposite side of the room, another officer was restraining a middle-aged man in handcuffs. It was Robert Wilson. His face was red with anger, his hair disheveled, and his expensive shirt was torn. At the edge of the sofa, Caroline was huddled. There were obvious bruises on her face, and her whole body was trembling. Her mother, Margaret, was crying while explaining something to an officer. "Mom." Avery called weakly. "You finally came." Lauren rushed to her daughter, forgetting herself. "Avery. What happened?" At that moment, the tension in the room exploded. "That girl is a liar," Robert Wilson suddenly shouted. "She broke into my house and ruined our lives." "Shut up." The officer restrained him. "Ms. Miller," the officer at the entrance called out. "According to your daughter, she was here tonight to gather evidence that her friend Caroline was being abused." Lauren was speechless. She couldn't comprehend what was happening before her eyes. "Mom, I was scared," Avery said in a trembling voice. "But if I didn't do anything, Caroline would have kept." "Lies!" Robert shouted again. "We're a perfect family. A family everyone envies." Lauren finally began to grasp the situation. "You hurt my daughter." Anger welled up inside her. "Ma'am, let's hear your daughter's story first," the officer intervened. "Can you talk while being examined?" he asked Avery. Avery nodded. Tears welled in her eyes, but determination was also visible. "I came to help Caroline. No one would believe her, we needed evidence." Lauren squeezed her daughter's hand. Looking at Avery's face, she thought, "I should have noticed sooner. I felt something was wrong." But now was not the time for regrets. Protecting her daughter and revealing the truth about Caroline were the priorities. "Tell me," Lauren said quietly. "Tell me everything." The living room of the Wilson house was filled with lavish decorations and luxury furniture, but now this perfect space was in disarray, with fragments of expensive antiques scattered on the floor. Lauren sat beside Avery, watching as the paramedic treated the wound on her daughter's forehead. "It's okay, honey. Mom's here now," Lauren said, squeezing Avery's hand. On the opposite side of the room, officers were escorting Robert Wilson to another room. Margaret Wilson was speaking with another officer, occasionally letting out hysterical cries. "This is all a misunderstanding. We're a normal family." Caroline sat alone, making herself small. The bruises on her face were clearly visible in the indoor light. Lauren couldn't help but look at her. Caroline glanced at Avery and smiled faintly. That smile contained both gratitude and fear. A female officer approached. "Ms. Miller, we need to formally hear your daughter's story. But before that, let me briefly explain the situation." The officer opened her notebook. "The 911 call tonight came from this young lady," she pointed to Caroline. "The call said, 'My father is hitting my friend.' When we arrived at the scene, Mr. Robert Wilson was in a violent state. Your daughter Avery appears to have had her head slammed against a wall, causing bleeding." "But why?" Lauren was confused. "Mom, let me explain," Avery said in a weak voice. The paramedic had finished treating her and stepped back a bit. Lauren looked at her daughter's face. In the eyes of the 14-year-old girl was a determination that seemed beyond her years. Caroline was being abused, Avery said quietly. I noticed it months ago. The reason she always wore long sleeves was to hide the bruises on her arms. She missed PE classes at school for the same reason. But no one would believe it. Lauren gasped. Why didn't you tell me? Caroline asked me not to. She said, don't tell anyone, ever. It'll only get worse if you do. Avery continued, fighting back tears. But it kept getting worse. Last week, when Caroline made just one mistake at a piano recital, her father. Avery choked on her words. Lauren could see Caroline shudder slightly. So tonight, I thought I'd get evidence, Avery continued quietly. I gave Caroline my smartphone and told her to record anything that happened right away. We were planning to make an anonymous report. But the plan didn't work out, did it? Lauren said gently. Mr. Wilson realized what I was doing, Avery explained, trembling. After dinner, Caroline forgot to put away one fork. Just for that, he suddenly got angry. Lauren could almost hear the angry shout, if you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all. He started hitting Caroline, Avery continued. I took out my smartphone and started recording, but he noticed and... Lauren embraced her daughter. That's enough. You don't have to push yourself. At this point, another officer returned to the living room. He had Avery's smartphone in his hand. We've secured the evidence, he said. The video clearly shows Mr. Wilson hitting his daughter, and then going after this young lady. The female officer approached Caroline. This wasn't the first time, was it? Caroline slowly raised her face. Her eyes were red and swollen with tears. No, she answered faintly. My father demands perfection. If I don't meet his expectations, even a little. She rolled up the sleeves of her sweater. There were bruises at various stages on her arms. From fresh ones to those already beginning to fade. Lauren gasped involuntarily. Why didn't you tell anyone? Lauren asked gently. No one would believe me, Caroline answered in a trembling voice. Everyone thinks we're a perfect family. My father is an influential person in the community, he does charity work. Margaret Wilson suddenly interrupted. This is all a misunderstanding. Robert is just strict, he's not abusive at all. Ma'am, the female officer said sternly. There is clear evidence. And it's obvious this isn't the first time. But, our reputation. Margaret's voice weakened. Lauren felt anger rising. Reputation. Your daughter is being abused, and you're worried about your reputation. Margaret collapsed into a chair, crying. You don't understand, when Robert gets angry. I also. She choked on her words. And for the first time, Lauren noticed that Margaret also had faint bruises on her arms. She too had been a victim. Avery squeezed Lauren's hand tightly. Mom, did I do something wrong? Lauren hugged her daughter firmly. No, you helped your friend. That's not wrong. Just, there might have been a safer way. You put yourself in danger too. But Caroline said no one would believe us without evidence, Avery said in a small voice. Just then, Robert Wilson's angry voice could be heard from the other room. I decide what happens in this house. My wife and children should all obey me. That's what family means. The female officer sighed. Mr. Wilson will be arrested. Caroline will go to a temporary shelter tonight. No. Avery cried out. Can't Caroline come to our house? The officer explained gently. There are legal procedures to follow. But we will definitely protect Caroline. Margaret Wilson started crying again. What's going to happen now? What will everyone think of us? That is not what you should be worried about, the officer said sternly. Your daughter's safety comes first. Lauren looked at Caroline. She was trembling slightly, but seemed a bit relieved. She looked at Avery and smiled faintly. Thank you, Caroline said in a small voice. That's what friends are for, Avery replied. In that moment, Lauren felt deeply proud of her daughter's courage and kindness. And at the same time, she was shaken by the terrible truth hidden beneath the surface of the perfect family. The officers escorted Robert Wilson to the police car. Margaret began talking with a social worker, and Caroline was guided to pack her belongings. Avery leaned against Lauren, looking exhausted. Mom, is everything going to be okay now? Yes, thanks to you, Lauren gently stroked her daughter's hair. But next time, if something like this happens, talk to me first. You don't have to deal with it alone. But Caroline said no one would believe us without evidence, Avery repeated. Lauren sighed deeply. I understand that. But your safety is important too. Before leaving the room, Avery approached Caroline. The two didn't exchange words, just looked at each other. Their gaze contained both sadness and hope. Without words, they both understood that their friendship since childhood had changed tonight, becoming deeper and stronger. I'll be in touch, Avery said softly. Caroline nodded. Lauren placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder and headed toward the entrance of the Wilson house. Walking across the luxurious marble floor, she thought about how much fear and pain had been hidden in this beautiful house. And for her daughter who had risked her life to expose it, Lauren felt a pride and love beyond words. A week had passed since the incident. On the kitchen table in Lauren's apartment, newspapers and documents were piled high. Avery still had a small bandage on her forehead, but the wounds to her spirit seemed deeper. Mom, I don't want to go to school, Avery said, clutching her coffee cup with both hands. Lauren sat across from her daughter and gently took her hands. What happened? Everyone's calling me a liar. They say I destroyed the Wilson family. Avery's voice was trembling. And Caroline isn't coming to school either. The aftermath of the incident was complicated. Robert Wilson had paid a high bail and been released. As an influential person in the community, he immediately hired a team of top lawyers and began claiming that family issues were being exaggerated. Even more surprisingly, Margaret Wilson had taken her husband's side. My husband is just strict, he's not abusive, she had recanted her testimony. Caroline had been temporarily taken in by relatives and was unreachable. Don't worry, Lauren told her daughter. The truth will eventually come to light. However, the reality was harsh. Local media emphasized Robert Wilson's community contributions and published articles criticizing Avery's actions for disturbing a family's peace. Community organizations and schools that relied on the Wilson family's large donations avoided addressing the issue. That afternoon, there was an unexpected visitor. The intercom rang, and when Lauren answered, a woman with a calm voice responded. Ms. Miller, my name is Samantha Collins. I'm a lawyer specializing in child welfare. May I speak with you? Lauren opened the door. There stood a woman in her mid-40s with a professional demeanor. Please come in, Lauren guided her to the living room. Avery came out of her room and looked at Samantha with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Avery, Samantha smiled kindly. I've heard about your courage. Thank you. Avery nodded slightly. Actually, Samantha took out a document from her briefcase. I had a chance to speak directly with Caroline. She asked me to give this to you. It was a handwritten letter. Avery quickly opened it. Avery, I'm worried about you. I'm okay. I'm at my aunt's house. But Mom has taken Dad's side and is saying I was lying. I'm scared. But I don't want to hide anymore. Miss Collins said she would help me. Thank you for saving me. You gave me courage. Caroline. Tears welled up in Avery's eyes. Samantha turned to Lauren. Ms. Miller, this case won't end easily. Mr. Wilson has power and significant influence in the community. But we have decisive evidence in the video Avery took. What can we do? Lauren asked. Fight, Samantha said firmly. And I think this might not just be about Avery and Caroline. Samantha's prediction was correct. Over the next few weeks, she found housekeepers who had worked at the Wilson house in the past and former subordinates of Robert. What emerged was a pattern of control and abuse spanning many years. Avery, while suffering from isolation at school, made a decision. She started a support group called Children with Secrets. At first, no one showed up, but gradually a few students began to participate. Having a secret you can't tell anyone about is really lonely, isn't it? Avery addressed the small group. But you're not alone. Meanwhile, Lauren, though fearing the impact on her work, also decided to stand up for justice. If my daughter had the courage to speak up, I can't stay silent. The trial date was approaching. As Lauren, Avery, Samantha, and Caroline, who had reunited after a long time, climbed the steps of the district court, they were bathed in the flashes of reporters' cameras. The courtroom was packed with local residents and reporters. Robert Wilson, dressed in an expensive suit, was surrounded by lawyers, his expression confident. Margaret sat away from her husband, looking down. What this court is seeking is the truth, Samantha said in her opening statement. The truth of years of abuse and control hidden behind a facade of perfection. Avery, standing on the witness stand, was trembling, but her voice was steady. I just wanted to help my friend. No one would listen to her. Caroline's testimony silenced the courtroom. My father demanded perfection. If I couldn't meet his expectations, even a little. She showed the bruises on her arms. This is the truth of the perfect family. Most shocking was Margaret Wilson's testimony. As if liberated from her fear of her husband, she suddenly began telling the truth. I was afraid too, she testified tearfully. Robert was an exemplary husband in society, but at home, he was a different person. Past victims also took the stand one after another. Robert's image as an exemplary father began to crumble. On the final day, Robert became enraged in court. I've done nothing wrong. It's a father's duty to protect his family. It was a moment when his anger and desire for control were fully exposed. The verdict was delivered. Robert Wilson was found guilty, and Margaret was given a conditional suspended sentence. On the courthouse steps, Caroline hugged Avery. Thank you, she said tearfully. That's what friends are for, Avery replied quietly. Lauren watched the two girls and felt a warmth in her chest. She had learned from her daughter that truth and courage are worth far more than superficial perfection. Avery turned to Lauren. Mom, we're not a perfect family, are we? No, Lauren smiled. But we have love and truth. That's what family really means. On the courthouse steps, Lauren, Avery, and Caroline embraced tightly. This was the beginning of a new form of family. As the three descended the courthouse steps, their figures were illuminated by the setting sun. Avery and Caroline held hands, with Lauren's arms around both their shoulders. They walked quietly as reporters' cameras flashed. What happens now? Caroline asked in a small voice. Her eyes contained a mixture of anxiety and hope. One step at a time, Lauren answered gently. You're strong, Caroline. There will still be difficult times ahead, but you're not alone anymore. A year later, on Thanksgiving Day, Lauren's apartment was busier than ever before. The small dining table was beautifully decorated, and handmade decorations that Avery and Caroline had made together lined the windowsill. In the kitchen, Margaret Wilson was preparing the turkey with unpracticed hands. Her divorce proceedings had finished, and she was taking the first steps to rebuild her life. Learning to cook was one of those steps. Need help? Lauren gently offered. Margaret smiled. The tension had disappeared from her face, replaced by a serene expression. Thank you. But I want to do this on my own today. In the living room, Avery and Caroline sat together, looking at college brochures. They were searching for schools to attend next year. Avery planned to major in psychology. I want to become a counselor for abuse victims, she had confided to Lauren earlier. Caroline sat at the piano. She used to play under her father's coercion, but now she was playing for her own joy. A gentle melody enveloped the room. Robert Wilson was serving his sentence in prison. His corporate empire had collapsed, and his social credibility was lost. Neither Margaret nor Caroline visited him. Even in prison, Robert continued to demand special treatment and refused psychological counseling. His figure, still justifying his actions, had lost its former dignity. Everyone, dinner's ready, Margaret called out. Around the table, the four joined hands. Let's say what we're thankful for today, Lauren suggested. I'm thankful for having the courage to speak the truth, Caroline said quietly. I'm thankful for finding a real family, Margaret said, fighting back tears. I'm thankful that we can all be together, Avery smiled. Lauren looked around at the three of them. The importance of acknowledging each other's wounds and supporting one another, rather than the illusion of a perfect family. A deep understanding that true family is not about blood ties, but about the bonds of protecting and supporting each other. After dinner, Avery and Caroline were looking at the contact book for the support group they had started at school. Now more than 10 teenage girls were participating. What should we talk about at the next meeting? Avery was pondering. Let's talk about hope, Caroline suggested. I want them to know that even when bad things happen, they're not alone. We're here for them. Avery nodded. Outside the window, snow had begun to fall quietly. Like the beginning of a new season, their lives were also turning to a new page. Not perfect, but as a true family filled with truth and love.